I've gone through the process of getting really excited about a comic, spending months researching and writing scripts, designing characters, creating storyboards, drawing and coloring the comic, thinking about how awesome it'll be when Image publishes my work, and what I'll do when I hit 10,000 subscribers on Webtoon, only for the comic to wither and die. And I've gone through this process more than once, and it hurts every time. But then I added 4 simple mindset shifts that guarantees that I won't go through that again. I no longer feel like I'm wasting my time, and I'm actually producing some comics. So let's not waste any of your time and get straight to them. The first mindset shift is momentum. Momentum is the irresistible force that drives us forwards to completing our comics. If you think about your comic like it's a car, motivation is what starts the engine, but momentum is what gets you from where you are to where you need to be. But how do you utilize it effectively? The first thing to realize is that momentum has nothing to do with speed and intensity. Putting in hours and hours of work at breakneck speed will not mean that you'll make your comic faster, because you'll just burn out and you'll end up producing a crappy comic anyway. This is what I did with the first version of my current comic, Flowers and Shadows, and it ended up being a waste of 3 months. Momentum is all about making little decisions every single day, and creating habits when it comes to making our comic makes this a lot easier. It could just be that you spend 10 minutes every day working on little areas of your comic and then 30 minutes on the weekends. That's not much, but even the minimal amount of time is going to add up. And you can get a surprising amount done in 10 minutes if it's focused work. I talk about that in this video here, so I won't go over old ground. The other habit to get into is to try to shut out all of the noise and just get on with making your comic. This means stop comparing yourself to other creators, stop being distracted by other comics or, dare I say it, YouTube videos, and just focus on what you're doing. It's easy to become preoccupied with our fears that nobody will like our comics or that others will judge us, and these things stall our momentum. So shut all of that out, spend a little bit of time every day on your comic, and complete your next page to the best of your abilities. Which brings us on to our second mindset shift, which is completion. Completion is kind of hard when it comes to comics because they take ages to complete. It can take several years to complete a comic, and it's really hard to maintain momentum for that length of time. It can feel that because the finish line is so far ahead in the future that we'll never get it done. And those feelings can slow us down, often without us even realizing. This happened to me recently. I felt that my progress had slowed to a crawl, and I was starting to feel like I'd never get this comic done. And I was able to get out of my funk by doing something completely different. I left the page that I was working on and started working on something else to do with my comic. In my case, I revisited some of my character designs to see if I could make any minor improvements. Obviously, you can't do anything major because then you'd have to redraw the pages, but you can do it with characters that haven't appeared yet. And even for those characters that have made appearances in your comic, you can add additional poses or expressions to your character sheets or rework some of the shapes. By doing this, I was able to regain some of the confidence that I'd lost while working on that page. And by the time I returned to those pages, I got my mojo back and I was able to finish them. Sometimes you need a break away from what you're working on, and completing a small task can give you that confidence boost that we so often need to get back on track. But if you're not feeling confident, or if drawing in general is what's causing you to feel so negative in the first place, there is an additional thing that you can do. Leave the comic page that you're currently working on and start thumbnailing the next comic page. This does a few things. First, it pulls you away from the page that's giving you so much frustration to begin with, and it allows time to gain a new perspective. But second, if you stop drawing and start thumbnailing the next page, thumbnailing isn't about drawing skills. It's about composition and storytelling and word balloon placement. And as I mentioned in this video, you can access a different side of your brain when you're thumbnailing versus doing the pencils or the inks. I did this for this page here. I couldn't get it to work and it was annoying me, so I thumbnailed the following 2 pages and then went back to this one. By that time I felt a little more confident and got it done. I wouldn't know what to do when I was starting to feel frustrated without paying attention to how I was feeling and figuring out why I was feeling so annoyed or negative about my comic. This is called reflection, and it's our third mindset shift. This is the hardest shift to make, I think, because it requires the most amount of experience. Not just experience in making comics, but experience of working with yourself and finding out what makes you tick as a creative. We all have triggers that slow or stop our momentum, and it's different for everyone. It could be that we start listening to our negative self-talk. It could be that our self-expectations are becoming more and more unrealistic and we're no longer meeting them. Or it could be something outside of comics completely, like a lack of sleep or life stresses. If you don't have experience in reflecting while you're making your comics, and so you don't know what your triggers are or how to resolve them, then there are a few things that you can do. The most efficient way of resolving them is to seek out a coach or a mentor who will be able to point out the triggers for you and offer you advice to move past them and hopefully not revisit them. Yes, I do offer those things. They're in the description of this video. But if you don't want to do that, then there is another option that is probably more suitable for the majority of people watching this. And that is finding a community of like-minded people. I found Reddit to be quite a good resource, but also it's Reddit, which means you have to take the positive with the negative, and depending on how lucky you are, you're probably going to get more negative than positive because it's Reddit. I personally don't like social media that much, so I'm not going to recommend anything beyond that as far as social media platforms go, but I will definitely recommend Discord. Now, I am biased for two reasons. One, I have my own Discord server, which I'm about to plug. And two, it's because it's the thing that has worked the best for me. I have a free Discord server that I'll link to in the description. But any Discord server is great where there's like-minded people. It's incredibly useful just to be in a room, whether that's real or virtual, with people who are similar to us because they get it. They understand because they're struggling in the same way that we're struggling. And they're more likely to be able to offer you solutions that can actually help because their problems are probably very similar, if not the same as yours. So don't be an island and seek out like-minded people either online or in the real world, or both. The fourth and final mindset is celebration. Celebrating our successes, however small, is key to keeping our momentum pushing us forwards. Success can mean different things for different people. For you, it could be sitting down for 10 minutes after a long day of work to work on your thumbnails. Or it could be learning a new trigger that slowed you down so that you can avoid it in the future. Whatever success means to you, take a second to acknowledge it and give yourself a pat on the back. You may feel like that's patronizing, but comics are legitimately difficult. And most of us go into them not knowing just how hard they are until we actually try them. Then we find out. But celebrating isn't about throwing ourselves little parties whenever we pick up a pen. It's about recognizing everything we've done as an achievement and using that positivity to propel us forwards. The best thing we can do for ourselves is actively work on our comic. Because what matters most is completing your comic, putting it out there in the world, and then starting on the next one. So anything that you're doing to help make that happen absolutely deserves celebration. Because most comics that get started don't get finished. And when you complete a comic, it makes that next comic easier to complete. Success breeds success. So celebrate your successes. The best thing about these mindset shifts is that they're cyclical. Once you get started, it's like a perpetual motion machine that just keeps you going. You start with momentum by adding those little habits every day until you hit a brick wall, which you will. Then you reflect on how and why you hit that brick wall, move beyond it, and celebrate that, which brings us back to momentum and the cycle repeats. Completing a comic is completing this cycle over and over again until we reach our ultimate goal, whether that's a 6-page comic or a 600-page comic. It's what gives you the edge over other comic creators who just go in blind, hit their first brick wall, and then stop, like I used to do. And if you want to get even more of an edge over comic creators, then watch this video next, where I show you how you can utilize 3D in your workflow.